Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Wait for Eight. Tonight or today, if you're in the US, because we have panelists from the US as well. The topic of discussion is whether India is a pawn, India is a toy in the hands of spy agencies, or the policy of big powers that they do not reveal, that they are tacit about. Now, it is no secret since the publication of the book Mitrokhin Archives II that the Indira Gandhi government was being puppeteered by the KGB. All her policies of nationalizing all assets, making the country completely socialist, was according to the will of the Soviet Union. However, this is something we came to know towards 2006, 2007 when this book came out. Subsequently, we also had a Russian journalist called Yevgenia Alberts, who said that between 1971 and 1991, KGB was paying Rajiv Gandhi through the minor account of Rahul Gandhi. But when it was happening, whether in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, Indian society was blissfully unaware of what was going on. It is not so like that. It's an internet-connected world. People easily get exposed when they have these sinister connections. Now, you've seen this week that they, put into service an idiot called Greta Thunberg, who did not know that the strategy was not meant to be posted on Twitter. Now, whether she was taken to task by her handlers or not is a different question altogether. But this is an age when you cannot get away with it. Now, since I am no way as famous as Mitrokhin, so a lot of you may not have read my exposes that I had written when this phenomenon called Aam Aadmi Party was rising. Who was funding them? Who funded Arvind Kejriwal? Ford Foundation. Who funds Yogendra Yadav? Ford Foundation. Who funds Indira Jaising? Ford Foundation. Who funds Medha Patkar? Ford Foundation. And we all know Ford Foundation is a front of the CIA. CIA in turn reports to the Pentagon. Now the point is, Pentagon's outlook is not quite like Kremlin's. America is not interested in having its kind of government in India. What, however, it does is it keeps the emerging economies on the boil. That is the conclusion I arrived at because of a lot of interaction with American agencies as well. And the idea is that tomorrow a China or an India should not unseat the United States from the top position it holds in the international market. So if you keep the environment disturbed, business cannot prosper, business cannot flourish in an environment that is disturbed, which is why they do it. That is my theory. We will discuss it later in the course of I beg your pardon. We will reveal more things in the course of this program. But the point is whether exposing these elements who try to keep India disturbed is enough from the Indian point of view. To discuss this, we have with us Gautam Mukherjee, who is a columnist, and also he appears regularly on television to discuss current affairs on politics and economics. We have Surendra Srivastava from the Loksatta Movement. He is again deeply into policy advocacy. We have from the United States Mantosh Sharma, again a political commentator. Akkhilesh Gautam ji joins us from the Middle East. We have Niharika Mishra, who has a background in human resource. We have from the Safe Bengal movement, Taposh Pal. I've been told that we'll be joined by a few other panelists in the course of this program, but we start with Gautam. Gautam, am I reading too much into the situation, or you share my view? Please unmute yourself. Okay, I've done it. Yeah.
There are two things here. One is the whole business of which block we belong to. Now we no longer belong to a block. At one time, there was a great incentive for both the KGB and the CIA. CIA in order to snoop, and KGB in order to keep us docile and attending to what they wanted us to do. But that was a very different India with 2% growth. Today, we are on a tear and run away. I mean, COVID apart, 8, 9, 7, 6. There are people in Europe who keep saying that we would salivate at 4.5% growth. And that on the back of a population which is 1.5 billion strong has momentum. It has momentum because the domestic demand, let me emphasize, demand is massive. India has always been insulated from the vicissitudes of what happens globally because we are not an export-dependent economy. Our economy is dependent on the domestic market. We have 10-12% of the overall GDP coming from exports. It could rise. Now,
which is how we survived 2008, right?
Sorry?
Which is why we survived 2008 during the subprime mortgage crisis.
And we continue to do so every time somebody puts a sanction on us or wants to shaft us without actually declaring it. Now what's happening is, and I couldn't be happier about it, is that we are emphasizing our own armaments industry. Once we get this properly established, it's happening quite rapidly compared to all the years of somnolence that we've had in the past. Once the armaments industry, that may make our ships, our aircraft carriers, our submarines, our planes, our commercial planes, our helicopters, our tanks, our guns, the lot. And it is on the cards, ammunition. Once this happens, who's going to push us around? We have an economy that supports...
Gautam, let's not be very complacent, because these activists that are funded from different bodies in the US have succeeded in Brazil. Just about a decade ago, we were talking about BRICS in glowing terms: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, you cannot try this in China, You try this activism in China, they'll do a Tiananmen Square, which they did in 89-90. So this will not succeed with China if this is America's way of keeping the emerging economies in check. But it succeeded in Brazil.
Let me put it this way. The CIA budget is the largest in the world. It's a formidable budget. Just like anything American, they know how to do it big. Now, having said that, there is plenty of ponies for hire in India, but how much impact are they having now? The trouble is the Aam Janta, not you and I, the intelligentsia, the educated, but the common man in the villages, the Kisan, not these ones who are on our borders, but the rest. And there are over 80% of the rest, 90% perhaps. This, what is on our borders, is 50,000 people worth, plus their slaves who have no choice but to turn up, or they'll be denied their next, hafta to buy seeds. So we are not anymore as pushable as all that, with a potential 7, 8, 9% growth, with the ability and the gumption mainly, of having a program not only in space and in satellites, but to actually develop multiple areas in our defense, which was always used.
Maybe that's disturbing them all the more.
It can disturb them all they like, but the point is that when we do this, you see, earlier it was all about commission earning. People didn't want to develop a local industry because they wanted to earn millions. And I've seen majors and colonels turn into very rich people.
Right.
Overnight, they idiot. But a commission of 2% on a defense deal.
Yes, that's big. That's big.
Into a billionaire.
It's huge. It's huge.
So those things have changed. And
I'll come back to you, Gautam.
I'm not too impressed with either the CIA, KGB, or whoever. They can fund these poor fellows who take their money by all means. But can they influence the nation?
Okay, I think they can, or they did it actually not so long ago. Surendra ji, you would recall that the National Advisory Council that Sonia Gandhi had constituted, that extra constitutional body to dictate or guide the UPA government, was almost full to the brink by Ford Foundation beneficiaries. Each one of them. And since that control is gone, and you would also recall that in the first term of Modi, he came down heavily upon NGOs. That may have really rattled them. Surendraji, yeah.
Surajit, first of all, I'm not very confident on what Gautam is saying, because enemy is more inside than outside. I think we should recognize that fact. And it is not new thing. It has been time immemorial. Indian society has been divided for a long, long time, maybe centuries and decades and all that. So I think we should not be very complacent about it. That's, having said that, this is not a new concept. Any country destabilizing the other country has been in practice. I think in our 2000 years history, if you see, we have been destabilized by many internal and external forces many times. So I think that's not an issue to discuss. As you rightly said,
no, why it is very significant is because on the face of it, America happens to be our friend.
Well, in geopolitical sense, there is no friends actually. We have to be our own friend. I think fundamentally we should agree. I think this government realizes that fact. I think I'm very happy about that. This government at least realizes. As far as NAC is concerned, let me come back to your point that NAC.
Yes.
In fact, we were one of the members of NAC. And we had to resign in 1.5 years or 2 years' time. We resigned quietly and went away after the RTI was passed. See, the issue is that what we are doing to control this. That's a question needs to be discussed. This is the practice. This is happening again and again, many times, many years, many centuries, and all that. So, what this government or any government should do to control this, that is important. Now. In a democracy, it becomes more and more difficult, not unlike China, which is a dictatorship. In democracy, it becomes more and more difficult. And particularly in a context of Indian society, it becomes much more difficult. Because we are internally divided so much. This is the first government which is actually trying to make a bigger vote bank compared to what used to be a fragmented vote bank and then collision of vote banks and all that. So this is the first time the government is trying to become a bigger vote bank. So it's about all politics. I think the kind of actions which we require is one, that we should have this government or any government should make a bigger vote bank, such a large vote bank which cannot be affected so directly or indirectly by these kind of things. Number one. Number two, we should have a mechanism in place, and I think I'm very disappointed about this government that we have been proposing so many changes in the rule of law kind of mechanism systems, but nothing is happening there. And unless we can pin down And these are very apparent follies. We can pin down many people on the basis of the facts and facts itself. But
Yes.
the mechanisms are so weak and so poor. Our staff is so untrained, and our concepts of investigations are so primitive that we are not able to pin down anybody. So I think the equity lies in us, and we should not be complacent. We should try and work both politically, a larger vote bank, better perception for any government which wants to run the country for forward-looking country, and we should fix our system of rule of law to ensure that what happened in China, we cannot do that, but through a proper legal process and perceptionally a very independent process, we can definitely pin down certain things, and we can overcome these difficulties.
Right. Mantosh, come in on this. Let me share an anecdote with you to begin with. You have lived in the US for many, you have been living there for many years now. Please unmute yourself. And I'm sharing with you an experience I had in the year 2010. I was contacted by a big agency in your country. I cannot name it because of legal, compulsions. I had a 6-month contract with them, and during those 6 months, I had to give them a report about the hospital network and healthcare in our country, and also in OPEC countries, in China, other emerging economies. Now, about 3 months down the line, they thought of having a midterm review of the progress. So they called me and asked me, how is the progress? What have you found so far? So I said, well, the US is still far ahead of us. You have nothing to worry. And the guy from the other end says, are you crazy? Is this why we gave you the contract? We need to scare the US Congress to squeeze out funds from them. We need to scare them that you would be overtaken any moment by China and India. Unless we can do that. So what I got from that interaction with American people, and I've been interacting on different fronts with people in your country, I find that yours is a paranoid society, or it's a society that wants to live in fear of being overtaken by emerging powers, and that helps this process. That helps. When let's say Ford Foundation decides to fund a Prashant Bhushan or fund a Medha Patkar to keep India disturbed, they have this thing in mind that India may overtake us any moment, any day.
So let me get back to you when you first opened the debate here in the beginning.
Yes.
Only. Our growth history is somewhere after 90, right? Mostly liberalization. I started with Rao. This kind of activity from US or Western power was happening since India became independent.
Yes.
It is not a new thing. They were funding it before liberalization happened. Before even the story of China, India came on the horizon that they will be a superpower one day. So that act was way before. That is a set of a template which with US, as I said, and I keep using the word in all the debate, that US relation to the world is very transactional. Transactional. There shouldn't be any mistake. Party political power heading the government doesn't make difference. There is a policy analysis in Washington, D.C., continuously researching course of action for not next 5 years, but 10 to 30 years or 50 years down the road, how US is going to play with the different folks. And that's how they create their template. So the point is that now that India and China is becoming a big economic giant is going to scare US is kind of misplaced narrative.
Okay.
US is very different. US, if they can't win you, they will play chug around you and they will profit from you. So when the emerging market in China, in 1980, when India and per capita income, China, India was the same. At that time, China was not much interest to US. But when their capability increased 5 times to per capita income of India, everybody is interested in China because it is transactional monetary things, and they became part of it. They've established biggest manufacturing hub so that they can get the cheapest product in the market and they sell to the world. And that's what they are looking for in India. They want to participate with India in the transactional terms so that capitalism, it should be there. So currently, they are looking more, or not currently, say from now to say last 10 years, they were looking more India as an importer of arms or importer of technology, just like Saudi Arabia, biggest importer. That's how they sell a lot of arms there. But now when they have seen, or we have established in the US that technical manpower is very strong, just like Israel did it, now they are converting into partnering things. So you are saying that a special
Mantosh, let me give you some more specific examples, and these are well-published facts. I do not have to claim any copyright on them. Even things that can take India forward, not only take India forward, but also help forging deeper ties with the US economically. For instance, let's say genetically modified crops. It is perfectly all right for an American to consume GM crops, but it is supposed to be horrible for Indians. Now, who are some of the flag bearers, these activists who do not let GM crops enter India? Take, for instance, Vandana Shiva. Now, people in India may think she is her heart bleeds for India and she is so concerned about the health of Indians. Now, all her partners who fund her, who back her in all her initiatives, they're all Americans. She has got 6 partners. Each one of them is an American. So why is America not appreciating the fact that, let's say, if GM crops enter India, maybe if their own firms can have business with us?
Could be. And that could be if their numbers align, because they are selling a lot of soybean and farms. Most of the farmers here are surviving their crops being sold to China. China needs mostly, so that could be, and that's what milk and other related products had been opened in this government, and that's what Trump administration was eyeing for. But point I am saying is that the way I look, and that the US policies are there, they are looking to be participate the way they did in China, but little bit change configuration to take part in the growth and sell their own product. The way you say selling the crops, all their brand, their technology. So you will also see not only they will not sell F-32 technology there, but they will partner with you for F-16 manufacturing somewhere in South India.
Yes.
So those things you will be keep saying it down the road.
So it's technology which is not the latest, but that is for sale. Akkhilesh, I'll come back to you, Gautam. Akkhilesh, you live in the Middle East, and we have there something as strong as Islam. But even Islam does not prove strong enough when it comes to American interest. Take, for instance, Saudi Arabia. Whenever things that are Islamic go to the extreme, the Saudi Arabian kingdom just puts the anchor. No, you cannot go beyond this. Even for the sake of Islam, and that is clearly because of American influence. And now we are seeing Saudi Arabia even coming closer to Israel, of all countries. So there is an overbearing American influence in the way the world functions.
Exactly. Well, when we're talking of the Middle East, first of all, let me tell you, the subject in which we are talking about kind of a multi-headed monster which we are discussing. It's not a very easy subject, and it's not a very light subject. In fact, I think I must congratulate you, Surajit ji, because you are actually pinning up the exact problem which the world and the particular nation is facing. So you can actually have the symptoms, what others, the andolans and other things, and AAP like parties and other things. These are the symptoms. These are going to be the output. But what is driving not only the Indian particular, but the world in particular, the thing is this the subject which you have pointed out. And I definitely again request you that keep on this thing, because this subject, even the national media is not even, they don't want to talk also. They don't want to discuss this matter. And for their own political compulsions, though BJP and the national parties, the so-called right wingers, they are the victims of this kind of a monster. Still, they don't want to openly confess. They still don't want to open that front.
Yeah.
So I think you are the first one. Yeah, I think you are the first one who is actually attempting to discuss this subject. Now, coming back to the problem in the kind of the Middle East. Now, Middle East has a different. It's changing very fast now. The reason is this: you like it or not, there is a difference between a Middle East Islamic people and then the other non-Middle East Arabic Muslims.
Asian.
There are different people. The Arabs are more particular about the race, not Islam. That is one thing. People is Islam, but they are more particular about the race. In any eventuality, they will be the first restoring, protecting their race. At the cost of their religion, theoretically, or sometimes hypothetically at one moment of time, they will, if it comes to that, they will be the only respecting that. So the game, the dynamics with US is different.
Yes,
the dynamics with US is different because
even they would go to the extent of not just in the case of Islam. During the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, Saudi Arabia provided them with air bases to launch attacks on Iraq.
So I'll tell you how fast. I'll tell you how fast it has changed. I'll tell you how fast.
Yes.
2015, I was doing a project for a defense ministry here, and there was a project manager here who was an Indian, but who was working for the defense ministries. And I said that why are you actually building such kind of an infrastructure? What is the use of that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. You are not going to invade anybody. Nobody is going to invade you. What are you trying to for what are you making such investment? He said the problem is Israel.
Right.
Now that is 2015.
That's a different kind of paranoia which the Arab world suffers
now the
from.
same thing. Look how dynamically from 2019-20 the things have changed.
Yes.
Now everybody is actually welcoming Israel as an ally. And okay, and they are saying the world is so. UAE is now opening it. It's saying that talented people can apply for citizenship now in UAE.
Yes.
Traders are tourism has opened up.
Yes, Niharika, coming to you.
Also, I'll just complete that. I'll just 2-3 points which I wanted to make in this point. That primarily, I agree with Gautam here that to actually extrapolate that. All this thing which is happening in the world and see that India is going to be ultimately eaten up by that thing. No, India has its own kind of I would like to say, a divine civilizational inertia.
Yeah.
It has that inertia. It will not be broken up so easy at all. Okay.
Equilibrium.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason is this. Yeah, we get frustrated. By the right wingers, political parties, and even in the social media that nothing is happening. But well, the end that the Qayamat is not going to come. That's for sure.
Right. Niharika ji, that reminds me also of, since you are from the human resource background, I'll give you a human proclivity to live in denial. Things happening, very obvious things happening before you, and you don't agree. So take, for instance, we began with a discussion on Ford Foundation. Now, you know that there was a time that even I was an activist, okay? And we had a small group. We wanted to make the group big. And so there was this organization, I'll not name it, but each one of you can make out what organization I'm referring to. They were coming with a huge procession of homeless people marching towards Delhi. You know which activist that is. Anyway, and we did not have any clue about his finances. Now, I was then, in a way, under the tutelage of another big-time activist who is very particular about Swadeshi. But nevertheless, he advised that I go and meet this guy. Now, when I set up this appointment and when I was waiting, I thought of doing a bit of digging, and I found out that this guy is massively sponsored by Ford Foundation. So I called up my mentor saying that you keep warning us not to get into a trap where foreign powers are controlling you, and you sent us to this guy who is funded by Ford Foundation. And then what he says is, so what? Ford Foundation gives money to Gujarat government as well. Just look at how his color changed. And so
I got your point.
When I did these published these four articles, one of the questions was, what is so wrong about Ford Foundation? There are so many BJP governments to which it gives amounts for specific projects.
Okay.
But then there is a difference. Let me just take two more sentences. There is a difference. When you are funding a government, you are not the only donor of that government. A government has a hell lot of choices. Whereas an NGO can be arm twisted.
Yes.
For an NGO, for Parivartan of Arvind Kejriwal, Ford Foundation was the only donor.
Right.
If Ford stopped the money, he cannot even pay his staff. So that way, the NGO of Medha Patkar or the NGO of Arvind Kejriwal can be arm twisted. The government of Gujarat cannot be arm twisted. It will say, to hell with you, I'll get money from somewhere else.
True.
Yes.
I agree. Surajit ji, I'll start with your initial comments and then first let me answer. I think you are talking about Rohingyas. And yes, the Rohingyas and the related aspects are very much, you can link the dots to Ford Foundation and their supports. I agree. Now, coming back to what you were saying, starting with CIA and KGB, I would say that India, as of now, has angered both CIA and KGB because we have bought planes from France.
Yes.
Okay, so that is one of the cause. But I would not simply go ahead with KGB and CIA. My analysis and my theory is more related to economies. So I would just say that the surplus economies of first world countries now have India as their main market. China is no more their market, but they are their competitors.
Yes.
The world powers can be broadly divided into three parts. That is communists, capitalists, and Islamists.
Okay.
Akkhilesh ji has very well pointed out that Islamists are more bothered about race. So I will come back to that aspect. And now coming to the internal stage, you see the five-star agitation which has taken place inside is actually a coordinated stage of these world powers to bring anarchy to India and to control our economy.
Yes.
That is why Mani Shankar goes to Pakistan, Yuvraj ji goes to China and Germany. Okay. Now,
Yuvraj is Rahul Gandhi, right?
Yes. Okay. I was not using the word.
Known as Chayanzada.
Yes. So in next part of my discussion, I'm just trying to link the dots which these stage players right now, the stage players of Rihanna, the others, Mia and this lady, let's come and try to link these players with their masters. First is Rihanna, okay, who is also known as Princess of China. In 2012, Atlantic.com had written an article where they had pointed out that 1.5 Chinese bloggers had responded to Rihanna's video, which was actually
1.5 million?
1.5 Chinese bloggers, 1.5 million Chinese bloggers had actually responded to Rihanna's video. Now, what was that video? That video was actually having a lady which also had some parts of Indian hands of Indian goddess Kali. Okay. And what was the aim of that video? The aim was Africa. The target was Africa at that time.
Yes.
China at that time was in search for natural resources and soft power push was used
It needed
to
a black
modernize
woman. It
continents.
needed a black woman to further their cause. You are saying
Yes.
that.
And that is how they established the infrastructural development in Africa at that time.
Yes.
And that is exactly, China is doing the exact same thing now in Sri Lanka. I'm sure you have pointed out, you know what I'm talking about. Okay.
Recently, in the recent years, exposed, even when it was found that they were funding 13 journalists in this country who would always come up with pro-China articles. But then again, there are certain countries who have historically been so hostile to India that, we are always on the guard. Let's say when it comes to something coming from China or something from Pakistan. But at least for the last 25, 30 years or so, we have considered America our friends. Increasingly, despite the sanctions on us due to the nuclear device test, etc., in '98 and all that, the US-India relations have improved in leaps and bounds since
I
Bill
agree,
Clinton.
Surajit. Here, I am not saying that Rihanna is part of US. I'm saying Rihanna is representing the communists and is more of a target of China. Right. So we have to understand that in US itself, Rihanna is not liked. It is liked more by Chinese. So, now come back to the second dot. Okay. That is Greta. Rihanna's tweet was used in Greta's toolkit. Imagine the same toolkit which we are talking about has Rihanna's tweet in it.
Yes.
So,
and
so
she just copy-pasted it on Twitter. She just copy-pasted it on Twitter without...
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So understand that Rihanna and Greta are linked.
Yes.
Now, my next step is Meena Harris, who is much more dangerous. Now comes US. So Meena Harris goes one step ahead and she tweets, outraged by paramilitary violence against farmers' protests. Imagine it is not a protest, it is no paramilitary action was taken.
Yes.
But she has just written out of the blues that paramilitary action was taken.
Rather, more than 350 policemen were injured in the violence.
Exactly.
Yes.
And to go ahead further, you see later Meena Harris also retweeted a Twitter thread by Deepa Shivram, who is an NBC news journalist, which asks people to follow Rana Ayub and Simranjeet Singh. Imagine an NBC journalist is actually telling us to follow Rana Ayub and Simranjeet Singh.
Yes.
Now coming to the point of Akkhilesh Gautam, let's not discuss even Mia Khalifa. I don't want to even discuss because her masters have been caught yesterday by NIA. I am talking about Riaz Nayak's friend. I'm sorry. Riaz Nayak's friend has been caught by NIA, and his name is Manpreet Singh, who is a Hawala operator from Amritsar. So from there, you can have the links of the Islamists involved in it.
Yes.
And the world power of the Islamists.
Now, in the past 2 days, we have also heard of a Khalistani connection of Rihanna.
Yeah, Khalistani connection definitely with Simran Kaur. We can go ahead and have the Khalistani connection. Okay. And
Niharika, I'll come back to you. I got the point that we are up against three major powers: communist, Islamist, and capitalist. So for different reasons, all the three are against us for something right that we are doing at the moment. If I've got your message right, please welcome.
The economy is the reason. The economy.
Let me welcome to the show.
Economy.
Let me welcome to the show Chandrachur Ghose, the famous author of Conundrum, co-author of Conundrum, which deals with the post-1945 whereabouts of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, where he argues very forcefully, along with Anuj Dhar, that Gumnami Baba was none other than Netaji. Besides that, he is a business analyst, and we would also like to get from him a capitalist perspective of things, because Chandrachur, before you joined the show, I was discussing with Mantosh Sharma, who has been living in the US for many years, more than a few decades now. So, and he talked about the business interests, etc., that America shares with any given country. There's no friendship or animosity involved there. It's plain business interest, plain economics. So in that case, if we go to the era of, let's say, Lal Bahadur Shastri, and your friend Anuj Dhar has written how fishy his death was, and how a KGB controlled India followed after his death. But those things are easier to understand now when we talk about a country that for the past 20 years or more has been quite friendly with us, the United States. We often get confused how to deal with this when it funds such nefarious elements in our country. And how do you juxtapose the two things? Doing business with us on the one hand, on the face of it, telling the world that India is a wonderful country, we would collaborate with it for mutual progress, etc. And behind the scene, Pentagon, via CIA, trying to keep India on the boil. How do you reconcile between these two things?
Well, Surajit, the mistake that we often make while looking at these kind of incidents is that we tend to take countries and governments as monolithic structures. No government or no country is a homogeneous entity. It's a heterogeneous. There are multiple strands. It represents multiple interests, diverse interests, and often they have internal conflicts. I mean, even if you talk about the US government or CIA or Pentagon, even within the Pentagon or even within the CIA, but not everybody or not every desk would be thinking in similar lines. And it's not that the president calls up the CIA director and tells him that you have to do this. It's often, I mean, there are separate interests, and the most powerful interest would push for their agenda to be inflicted on other countries. Like you were referring to the time of Lal Bahadur Shastri. I would go back even farther, even back than that, and even at a time when the Russians hadn't gained a foothold in our country. At that time, India, Pakistan, the subcontinent was an area of competition between the US and the UK and the USSR. The USSR trying to gain entry through different means. The UK trying to retain its control over several institutions and politicians and the bureaucracy, and the USSR putting pressure through aid to Pakistan and championing Pakistan cause. I mean, yes. It's easier to understand that power play today because we have everything, most of the documents, most of the archival documents, decision-making documents in front of us. Anybody who wants to understand or read up can easily do so, and becomes clear how the power play was played out. But today, as it happens, I mean, one thing is that we often tend to ignore the role of intelligence in politics and statecraft. Because it's natural for common people, for the lay person, because we tend to get engaged with what is visible to us. We don't always get to see what is going on in the background, whose interest they are playing out. So to me, this point that you made, that on the face of it, US is posturing as a friend, while disturbing activities are being sponsored by it. It's not a surprise. I mean, of course, there are various interests. There is a market to be captured. There are political points to be made. I mean, Narendra Modi is popular with Indians, but obviously there are other interests who would want to see India not with a very strong central government, but would want to go back to that coalition thing, the weak coalition.
Let me just interrupt you for a minute, Chandrachur. The article, or rather the compilation of article that I referred to at the beginning of the program is called, it appears in the form of a Facebook note on my account. It is called the CIA Ford NGO Congress NAC ARP Nexus. Now, in the first of the 4 articles that are compiled there, I have quoted scholars, I have quoted retired sleuths of the CIA who have admitted on record that this is something that Pentagon does. It's not a theory. It begins with my first article in that compilation, begins with this James Petrus, retired Bartle Professor Emeritus of Sociology at Binghamton University, New York. He says 50% of the 700 grants in the field of international activities by the principal foundations were funded by the CIA. Now, it goes on to say things like, at times it seemed as if the Ford Foundation was simply an extension of government in the area of international cultural propaganda. The Ford Foundation had a record of close involvement in covert actions in Europe, working closely with Marshall Plan and CIA officials on specific projects. These are also, kind of confessions by retired personnel of CIA. It's not an accusation by some outsider.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but even then, it is not surprising. I mean, it's to be expected. It's to be expected because we know while the KGB was at the top of its game, they did the same thing. Now, if it is the CIA or any other or MI6, whoever it is, they would be playing these games, and statecraft goes hand in hand with spycraft. So, I mean, these are things destabilizing foreign governments to enhance your power there. This is a normal course. The good thing is what we have today is the social media, where there is a tremendous exchange of information and idea, and things get exposed so quickly. That is the power which people have today in their hands, which was not there in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even the early part of this millennium. So that has made a huge difference.
Yes. That takes us to the second and concluding part of this program, which is, now that these elements are getting exposed every now and then, it's really not helping, because Gautam, well, we exposed them in CAA, we found the same people in wrong places at the same time or at different times. But whether it is CAA or it is the farm laws now, they just need an excuse and they would come out in the open from the woodwork all over again. And this would keep happening over and over again. So just exposing them wouldn't be enough, right?
In the perception game, Surajit, it is, rather like ping pong or tennis or back and forth, any kind of game, where you have to take overt, covert, propaganda, fact as read, as Mr. Ghosh said. It is all fair in love and war. Now, having said that, what is the difficulty in the government getting a little more proactive and taking the battle to the enemy? Why is the government on the defensive?
Exactly.
Why is the government trying to be Gandhian in an absurd kind of way? Because it doesn't end up Gandhian. It ends up getting authoritarian, but it starts off sort of ignoring it, hoping it will go away. Then it reacts mildly. Then it reacts more harshly. Why don't we cut the crap and go for it in the first place? Why don't we take the battle to the enemy? The left wing has no difficulty in propaganda and lies. They use it as...
It has no difficulty even to make the Supreme Court wake up in the deep of the night.
Well, the Supreme Court
is... Their people can be granted a bail. Yes.
No, let's understand how that happens. I mean, we've got bureaucracy, which has been built over 60, 70 years, which is leftist and congressy. Then you've got the bureaucracy, the judiciary, ditto. You've got the foreign service, ditto. Now, the government of India, i.e. the Modi, NDA, BJP is working on top. It's like, they always say a major or a colonel has a lot more operational power, obviously, than a general. A general sets agendas. and the major and colonel is in a very good position to subvert it. Now, having said all this, in terms of what the CIA is doing, or what the KGB is doing, or our fifth columnists, which are well funded by such people, and the Islamists. Now, going back to the earlier point made about a difference between South Asian Muslims and Muslims in Southeast Asia, as in Indonesia, Malaysia even, and the Arabs. The Arabs are really not half as kattar as the South Asian Muslims, who are not even regarded as proper Muslims by the Arabs because they're converts. And they say so frequently that you're our slaves. You're good for buying, and we'll get you to do various odd jobs for us, and look after whatever we feel like.
That takes care of the aspects that Akkhilesh and Niharika highlighted.
So in other words, Islamists cannot be taken as a block. What they can be, there is a caste system. The caste system, as far as the West Asians are concerned, they certainly regard these fellows as inferior. The Southeast Asians are much more cultured, and they're not involved with what Pakistanis and Indians and Bangladeshis and such like are up to. Now, so these Islamists come at the bottom of the pile, and they are, semi-criminals in terms of how they show their political fist. Now, then you've got the Russians. The Russians want to sell stuff to us. They're not the USSR anymore. And as far as the Americans are concerned, if they don't, if they wag their fingers too much, as is typical of Democrats in particular, though Biden is making all the right noises, I'm a little suspicious because he is, after all, a Democrat. But in the event he is not an Obama Democrat or a Clinton Democrat, but his own person, because in his personal life he's suffered a lot. He has a long track in politics, as Professor Nalapat on NewsX keeps telling me, so he seems to be making all the right noises, and he seems to be his own man. I don't think
he has begun the innings well. Yeah, Biden has begun the innings well. But since we are looking for, and even
Kamala
so many
Harris
people who are reacting to this debate, are saying, so many people reacting to the debate, like this one, says that yes, government should be more proactive and assertive. So I'll take that to Surendraji. Surendraji, since you are a policy advocate, let me relate to you my interactions with the current government in India when the clampdown on the NGOs began. Rajnath Singh was the Home Minister back then. And I told the officials, I'm quite amused that you are going after NGOs because they have not been doing a good bookkeeping exercise. This FCRA violations. But the main problem where we come to this interference by foreign powers via NGOs is that India says that if you are an NGO, you cannot participate in elections. For that, you have to be a political party, or you have to fight as an independent. Now, what happens is, let's say I am Manish Sisodia, I run Kabir, and I have to enter politics. I give away Kabir to my wife and I enter politics. That is the problem. That is how, it is not just keeping India on the boil, but also having their kind of people in Indian politics that these foreign powers are managing. Shouldn't the government do something about, plugging this loophole?
Well, I think Gautam covered quite a lot about this governance. Our governance architecture is very, very weak and poor.
Yes.
Frankly speaking, for over the decades, I think nothing has been done as far as the civil services reforms are concerned, or the architecture, setting up the right architecture for the rule of law, which includes prosecution, judiciary, and police. And so these are the fundamental issues. And I think, and apart from that, I think the electoral reforms are pending for a very, very long time. And we have not been able to overcome our difficulty in electoral reforms because the people who wants to do it, they are supposed to, they are getting directly affected by that. So I think it's a long process, and has to be a lot of push and from the public. And slowly, I think I'm not so disheartened. I think a lot of things have changed, and that's why the public discourse is changing. Of course, social media is one of the added advantage to us today. But I think in the last 15, 20 years, the public discourse has changed completely, quite a lot from what it used to be earlier. But as I earlier said, that the reforming the complete government architecture, right from the third tier of the government, starting from the third tier of the government, which is the lowest and where 80 to 90% life of ordinary citizens is affected. I think that is one of the key before we even talk about the electoral reform, because I think electoral reforms nobody would be interested at the moment, because when they come to power.
You know why I named Manish Sisodia here is because of some specific reasons, and I'm talking about I can back my data with documents. Generally, we believe that corruption happens because of money, but corruption happens also to push a certain agenda. When Sushil Kumar Shinde was the Home Minister of the country, he allowed Manish Sisodia to receive foreign funds even before Kabir was registered.
Well, Surajit, this is
even before Kabir was registered as an NGO.
If you see any politicians or political parties, they have these kind of parallel arrangements made either through media or in media. So I think and now I think in the last 6 years I'm seeing less incidents like this. Otherwise, every media house or every media person was either on the payroll or indirectly or directly of the government, because everybody was looking for a Rajiv or something else, and I think they were getting it apart from the foreign jackets and all that. So I think the issue of the last 6 years is some certain positive direction has taken place, but long way to go. And I don't think this government is actually focusing on the real setting of the right architecture of the government. That's a problem.
Yes, Chandrachur.
I just want to make a quick 2-3 points. One thing is the change that has happened is what Dr. Jaishankar tweeted, that this is a new India. This India will fight back. And that definitely is a credit that has to be given to Narendra Modi government. And I mean, it has instilled that sense that this is a stronger India which can fight back and it can stand its ground. That credit has to be given to Modi. Having said that, the 2-3 conflict zones that still exist and which we have to resolve is firstly, which I keep telling, and not many people are aware, that there is officially and legally there is only one Gandhian party in our country, and that is not the Indian National Congress, that is the Bharatiya Janata Party, which has Mahatma Gandhi as the fountainhead of its ideology in its constitution.
In the party constitution, yes.
So today, in today's world, it cannot neither drop Gandhi nor go against him. So it's a confused Gandhian party right now. So there's a dilemma. Now, the worst thing, with that confused situation, they have to fight a bureaucracy or to control a bureaucracy, manipulate a bureaucracy, which is Nehruvian, not leftist, but Nehruvian. You would be surprised to see the way cabinet notes are written or the language used by the bureaucrats, senior bureaucrats. It's the way Nehru used to draft his letters or notes. They are copied verbatim with paragraphs modified and substituted with new situation as the situation demands. But the Nehruvian, Nehru's imprint is clearly there in the even in the language that the bureaucrats use. So a confused Gandhian is negotiating with a Nehruvian core. It's
an uphill task, you are saying, with this kind of a system in place.
That's one conflict. The other conflict is, despite being a stronger government or being a government that has a sense that India can fight back and India needs to be stronger, and doing what at least to some extent, the needful to make India stronger. The Modi government has always faced this challenge of international perception, that the slightest misstep and it will be branded as a fascist and dictatorial government. So that is a very, very, very careful step that has to be taken to negotiate that. It's not easy game. It's not easy game. So despite, although we might want more and more from them, so these three elements, I think, makes the task of the government pretty difficult.
Let's ask someone who openly supports the current government. Taposh, we haven't heard from you since the beginning of the debate. So welcome to the show. Yeah. So what do you think the government that you support should do to address this challenge, to meet this challenge of foreign interference in Indian affairs?
I was listening all of you, and they were explaining very nicely on this. In added to that, what I can say in the concluding remark is, we have to develop a value system in our leaders, whoever is the MLA, MP, whoever it is. So there should be minimum courtesy, minimum integrity, minimum value system need to be developed in them, that in whatever cause it is, either you are in the back side or a front side or a left side or a right side, we should not compromise with our national integrity. Country is first. If we started compromising
what should the government do? Was my question. What should the government do more to tackle such foreign funded elements?
It's I'm coming to that because the same question everyone has answered. What I try to say is something other than this, is that all the parties. It's not
of society. That's what you are stressing on. Yeah.
No, not society. This is the responsibility of all the parties who is claiming that they are part of the country, and they are claiming once upon a point that we are going to run the government if we are coming into the party. They should have this kind of counseling within themselves, that in whatever condition it is, we should not give the anti-national statements. We should not compromise with the national integrity. At least that value system should be developed, either irrespective of the language politics or a caste and whatever it is you are doing. See, in few days, whatever we have seen and what we have observed is, Congress is desperate to come to the power, and in order to go against the Modi ji and Modi ji's government, their leaders, Mani Shankar Iyer, is going and sitting with the
that is all obvious. Suppose we know what the other side is doing. The question is, what are you doing to counter that?
What government
that you support doing?
Government is putting checks on that. If you have seen or noticed also, during the CA protest, around 70 accounts has been opened by PFI, I guess.
Right.
And they have a close monitor on that how this money flow is going on. See, if you observed closely, when our party was formed, during that time, this Ford Foundation and all these people who is always believe on the anti-national activities, they came to know that BJP is going to come into the power, and the main agenda for the BJP is the 360 and the activities which is the Islamist terrorism. That time only they have linked this AAP people with the Khalsa people in the Punjab. If you've seen, Sanjay Singh was very much confident that we are going to conquer the Punjab very soon, and they were expecting also. And four MPs also selected.
People who are not pro Khalistan in Punjab, they got put off by their alliance with Khalistani elements.
If you go and see all the people who were doing the campaign for them,
the particular answer I'm looking for. Akkhilesh ji or Niharika ji, if you have the answer, yes, Niharika.
I have the answer.
What more should the government do?
Yes, Surajit, as of now, the government has just stopped. They have put a cap on their funding, which is not enough.
Yeah,
And
that's
the
precisely
only
my
way,
point.
yes, and the only way
If
they
my
can
NGO gets
stop
into a
this.
problem, I hand it over to my wife and again get about my business. That's what is
No,
happening.
government has gone one step ahead, and government has stopped the funding also in some cases. But that also is not enough. And what is the solution is to bring back TADA. Have one example for these NGOs.
We have
Scare
UAPA.
them,
We have
scare them like
UAPA
anything.
now.
Yeah, so
Surendraji does not agree. Yes, Surendraji.
but they've not used it. They've not used it. And then you have to put people behind bars for treason. If you do that, then you will have an example, and these people would be scared. So you have to have an example to make them scared.
Yeah,
And one more thing, Surajit, I would just like to come back to what Gautam has said. That the colonels have more power for strategic decisions. I'm sorry to say I am myself a defense person's daughter.
Anyway, that would cause a digression from our topic.
Yes,
we would digress from the topic. We'll deal with that some other time.
Mantosh, and they take the decision.
Mantosh ji,
just one more point, Surajit.
One point.
Quickly, in just one sentence. Niharika, just
back.
one sentence. Yes.
One sentence. One sentence on your Ford Foundation. See, that is the reason why US economy is definitely controlled by Pentagon. And I agree with you. And that is the reason why we have not seen a single lady president. Because a lady president cannot control weapons. And their economy is...
Kamala Harris will
take strong exception to your
Kamala
statement.
Harris will soon.
You will be sued, or your life will turn hell in their
2 points. If you
yes, Surendraji, quickly. Yes.
We can have a defense minister.
I think Modi has said rightly that there is a tough task of balancing for Modi, but still there are enough areas of governance which can be really reformed and make effective. That's one.
Yes.
And I can list it out so many. As far as Taposh is concerned, making man and value system only will come when the system is there to hold it. The value system. I was a very ideal person. When I came in life, I had to deal with the same system, and I became part of the system. So I think we need to understand the system needs to hold that value system. Right. As far as Niharika's point, any amount of any kind of laws will not help. We have enough mechanism. We have enough laws. If implemented effectively for making
we have to set an example.
One second. Even for making them effectively, the infrastructure or architecture of the rule of law, which include judiciary, policing, and the prosecution, needs to be independent, needs to be made professional, needs to be, and it is not a rocket science. Many countries have done it. Even if we copy it, we can do it. But there should be a political will. That's all. Right.
Mantosh ji, the day before yesterday, many in this country were amused that the Ministry of External Affairs should react to a pop star. What was the reaction in your country? Or in hindsight, do you think it was the right thing to do? The Ministry of External Affairs of India reacting
was there any reaction that day?
Rihanna's tweet.
Any reaction?
So, I think personally that state should not be involved what 2-3 girls said around the world, not be nice. I showed the institution how the institution. So in my personal opinion, the whole thing could have been handled in a better way, not only through the government in the central government, but also the political supporting organizations which made this counter tweet and counter those things. It just created the mockery. Not only the mockery, it blew up the whole situation in Delhi around now. Each one knows that what is happening in Delhi, and God knows from where.
No, I was okay with Sachin Tendulkar saying that we should stay united. That was, I think, a very dignified way of not naming anyone and still making your point.
So
the MEA shouldn't have got into it. Maybe.
If something government would have done it, is that all those great things or execution happen.
Keralites had a problem.
That is different. Last 6 months or 8 months, like take the example of Corona. Right now, Corona situation has been greatly changed and West is suffering. Those things are talking. How this new market economy is going to help in other sectors of the farming community. Those are a lot of brownie points which could have been spoken and stated around the world. So somehow, in mistaken way, not only the government, but organizations and the teams supporting the government, they also went into the wrong foot and they attacked it in the stereotype template, the way they attack their political
opponents. Just in a sentence or two, how would you advise the Indian government to proceed from here? First, on the issue of stopping this foreign interference in Indian affairs.
So foreign interference will not be stopped. Just be very clear, world is dependent. And as leadership change, it will not be stopped.
How should it be tackled? Yes.
Yeah, so it could not be stopped in that way. As I said before, government, all those social work needed to be advertised very thoroughly, what is happening and what government is doing on the social functions. How
communication.
Communication.
Yes.
Right away. And on the second note, the same way, there should be again the dialogue of the talk on the movement needs to, so that world should understand that it is willing to talk and it is engaged in the dialogue.
So the government's communication channels should do a better job, which they are not doing. Akkhilesh, quickly, your conclusion.
I just want to make 2 sentences. First is exactly, instead of being the mechanisms, what I want to say is that the lion needs to learn how to roar. Only the jackals will be running away. So, communication channels, all those things are, but the resolve to fight. Please understand, India has always been a battleground for the international forces. They know that India has all, whether it was Islam, whether it was the British imperialism, whether it is the newfound the international forces, they know India is always the final frontier. So, resolve to fight back, that has to come with the government, because just one thing, because these forces actually try to shape everything, the thinking, the civil services, the habits, the consumptions, the markets. So they shape you in according to think in their line. That is where we have to come up and say, boss, this is what is being dictated on you.
Right. Niharika ji, anything you want to add?
Yes. Akkhilesh ji, you've correctly pointed out. I would just say one thing. There are instances where the situation has blown out of proportion, and it could have been solved if government
solutions.
Had
Niharika, we are running out of time.
Nip the bud is the only solution. Nip the bud. The moment it starts, nip it.
Yes. Okay. Final comment, Taposh.
See, what I feel at this moment is Bharat Mata Ki Jai. It should not have a difference with different people. If army people is saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai and politician is saying, or a students who is studying in the primary, and it should have the same meaning for everyone. Then only we can create the value system for our leaders. Now, government has to do in all the senses, like they should encourage the people to do, encourage the value system, number one. Number two, laws and intelligence agencies, all those people are working fine. They need to be strengthened more. And also government should talk to these people that before investing into them, please have a check that you are doing the correct thing or not, because it is ultimately going against the international. Because these people are taking the money from the Ford and they are compromised with the ISI. So these kind of things, they need to put checks on that.
Before addressing the problem, first of all, the problem needs to be identified also. Chandrachur, final, it should be recognized as a problem to begin with.
See,
Chandrachur, final comments.
Final comment is this, that in the talk of CIA, Pentagon, KGB and all those things, we are ignoring the fact that we also have our IB and RNAW.
Of course.
So if Dr. Jaishankar was responding to something, he was not responding to Popstar, but through the Popstar to the wider network behind her. So I think that was needed, but I agree with what was pointed out, that there needs to be more communication. A propaganda war has to be fought back with propaganda war, and if you are not capable of doing that, then you will appear as a victim and you will lose out. So don't appear as victim. Oh, somebody has said bad thing about me. No. We are not in the 1930s and 40s where somebody writes Mother India and you said such a book and a bad book and all. We are not victims anymore. Fight back and talk to people, communicate. The weakest point of Manmohan Singh government was it had stopped communicating with people at different sections. Right. Gradually, I'm seeing this government getting into that zone. It's talking less to people. That has to change.
Right. So communication is one solution that I think more or less all our panelists agree upon. With that, we have completely run out of time. This is an issue that deserved more deliberations, but we will come up with a different angle, a different aspect of the same perturbing, perplexing question once again. Thank you for being with us. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Thank you. Jai Shri Ram.